Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedCommsNetworking.com and the associated website. So information, resources, services for people who work in and around the global community, people working in medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, the associated businesses and so on. But importantly, what we also do is provide a lot of information for people who would like to know more about getting a job in and around MedComms. You'll find lots of information at FirstMedCommsJob.com, videos, careers books, articles and so on, and careers events and so on. So go and have a look. If you've not had a look, you'll find lots of useful information there. One of the things we're doing at the moment is we are recording a number of so-called masterclasses, which we're putting onto FirstMedCommsJob.com and over at NetworkPharma TV, where you'll find lots of videos. And I'm inviting people like Sarah today to come along and talk about topics that should be of relevance to people trying to get a job in MedComms, in or around MedComms. So without further ado, Sarah, you're here to talk about LinkedIn. So I'm going to hand over to you for the presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A after that. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining wherever you are. I can see we've got people from all over today, so thank you for your time. So today we're going to be talking about LinkedIn and how you can use that to further your career in MedComms. And as Peter mentioned, it's a repeat of the masterclass that I gave at the Heathrow event in November 2022. And that was generally for people trying to get their first job in MedComms. But today I'll include a little bit of information for other people as well. So perhaps you're looking for your next step in MedComms, or perhaps you're a freelancer looking for clients. So I'll try to include something for everybody. If you've got specific questions, please add those in the chat. So before we start, a little bit about me. I trained as a medical writer back in 2006. I joined quite a large agency and went through their graduate training program. And then I worked my way through up the ranks of the career ladder in agencies up until about two and a half years ago, when I went out on my own. I founded my company called Green Pen Solutions, and now I'm working as a freelance medical writer, but also as a trainer and a mentor to help other medical writers in their own careers. And very early on in my the growth of my new business, I decided that LinkedIn was going to play a really big part in helping me to find new clients for both the writing and training aspects. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, how I've used it. Right, before we go into that, I'd like to tell you about the framework that I use in most of my mentoring and training sessions. So this framework is something that I've come up with myself. It won't be widely recognised throughout the industry, but I find it really useful to explain all of the facets of being a medical writer. Okay, it's not just about being able to write well. And after I've gone through this, I will just say a word about how I would adapt this for those of you who are not medical writers, perhaps in client services, how this would apply to you. So the first pillar I've called technical writing, because of course, medical writers need to be able to write well, need to have a really good grasp of the English language, of different aspects of punctuation and grammar, and you have to understand how you can use writing, how you can vary the words and the tone and the rhythm for different audiences. For example, you would write quite differently for a patient than you would for a doctor. The second pillar I've called scientific understanding, because as you may well know, medical writers work on lots of different therapy areas. So we have to have kind of a baseline level of education to be able to pick up a paper on any therapy area and understand it. So that requires us to understand, the biology of the body, how different diseases and pathologies arise, how those diseases are treated, and then how we can show that treatments work. So basically clinical trial data and how those are analysed with statistics and so on. So there's a lot wrapped up there in scientific understanding. The third pillar I call agency skills, because as you've noticed today, the working in an agency environment comes with lots of sort of requirements for, you know, being able to work in a certain way. And by that I mean working as part of a team, being able to communicate with lots of different people, from professors who are your sort of KOLs or authors on your publication, right down to people within your team. Perhaps they may or may not have a scientific background if you're briefing a designer, for example. So you have to have lots of different communication skills to be in an agency environment. And then I also talk to writers a lot about time management as well. So being able to, you know, write well, but within a certain time frame and within a given budget. And it's under agency skills that I also talk to more experienced writers about things like leadership skills and management. The fourth pillar is called storytelling, and this alludes to the way in which we get information across to our audience. Some writers might be really skilled in writing publications, for example, relying a lot on words to get their message across. Whereas at the other sort of more creative end of the scale, you might be using more visual ways to get your message across in video storyboards or infographics or visual abstracts. So these are all different ways of storytelling. And medical writers, again, typically you might be specialised in one or another, but typically you'll be using a range of storytelling skills. And lastly, strategic thinking. So I think this is really important to include right from day one of a writer's development, thinking about the bigger picture. So, you know, what is this piece of work that I'm working on going to ultimately be used for? How will it impact the patient, the doctor, the client, and so on? So this is, and obviously there's a lot more to strategic thinking as you become more experienced. So these are the things that I talk to medical writers about. I think that medical writing is a very, very varied profession these days, and what the skills and experiences that one medical writer will have in these 5 pillars is likely to look very different to those of another writer. Okay, and you can become very specialized in certain pillars. In terms of client services, so your main focus here is going to be on agency skills and strategic thinking. Okay, so obviously being able to talk to clients, manage budgets, plan strategically on accounts, these are the things that you'll be focusing on, less so than scientific understanding and storytelling. Okay, so how does this relate to LinkedIn and your profile? So right at the start, we mentioned that a lot of you will be interested in how you can use LinkedIn to help you find a job. So before we get into the LinkedIn profile, let's look at how agencies recruit new candidates. And this is, I've specified here that it's entry level, but it's actually quite similar for recruiting experienced writers as well. So the very first step is going to be the agency will receive a CV and cover letter. So these are the very first pieces of information that they get to see about you and who you are and what you can do. There will be a writing test as well, where they'll give you some kind of assignment to basically see what your capabilities as a writer are right now. Okay, how much training you're going to need. Then you're likely to have a screening interview. So this will be quite a short, maybe 30-minute video or phone call, maybe with an HR person. And that will lead on to a main interview. I think many agencies are still doing remote interviews, but more than likely you'll be asked into the office to meet one or more people who you'll be working with. And this is where you get to, you know, share more details about your skills and experiences. And then there may or may not be another further assessment as well, perhaps a presentation or a team-based activity. So this is kind of a generic process. Agencies will have their own version of this, may include all of these steps, it might just include some of them. The writing test might be before the interview, it might be after. Okay, so, but generally, this are the main steps. And you can see that LinkedIn is going to come in right at the very start next to your CV and cover letter. If a hiring manager sees your CV and thinks, oh, that looks quite good, I myself, the first thing I would do is look you up on LinkedIn. It will be, your profile will come up throughout the process, though, as more and more people become involved in the hiring process. So again, if the hiring manager thinks your CV looks good, they might share it with the writing team, for example, and they too are going to look at your LinkedIn profile. So with that in mind, what should your profile be telling them? Now, a really sort of tried and tested principle about doing business is that people like to do business with people. We don't do business with companies, we do business with people. And more than that, we do business with people we know, like, and trust. Okay, so if you need a plumber or an electrician to work on your house, one of the first things you're going to do is maybe ask a friend or a neighbour or a family member, do you know of a good plumber? Their recommendation means a lot. Okay, so we as humans like that sort of, that gives us an insight into who this person is. And in some ways, LinkedIn is kind of doing that. It's getting people to know, like, and trust you from a distance. And it's great because you can build that sort of first step of the relationship with people who are on the other side of the world. So with that in mind, would you rather do business with this person or this person? And it's at this point when I take a breath and hope that everyone's thinking that you'd rather do business with the person on the right. And the main reason is because there's more information about me. Firstly, there's a profile picture. Again, you know, it's just getting that first step towards knowing the person. So if you don't have a profile picture on your LinkedIn page, I would encourage you to do so, because yeah, there's no reason why not to, really. If you work with somebody, it's likely that you're going to meet face to face. Also, bear in mind that LinkedIn is kind of showing the professional side of you as well. And you should think about having a photo that conveys that. Okay, some people have sort of holiday photos on there, which is fine, I think, but having a more business-like photo, I think, shows that you understand what LinkedIn is. It's the business side of you. And also have a look at your profile picture now while we're here and think, is it well lit? Can we see the whole of your face? I've seen profile pictures that are kind of cut off here. So yeah, it's worth making sure that that profile is showing the best side of you. And of course, the second thing on this sort of very first profile banner is your headline. So you can see that my headline is helping MedComms agencies train and retain their best medical writers. And then I've got this bar medical writing mentor. Okay, so in a nutshell, what are you offering to potential employers or ideal customers? And there's a couple of different scenarios. In the first scenario, it might be that you're finishing up your PhD or something like that, and everyone's aware that you're going to be moving on. So here you have a lot of freedom with your profile, your headline. So you can say aspiring medical writer, for example. I've connected with a lot of you on the call today because you've got aspiring medical writer in your profile. You could say future medical writer, something like that. Okay, and then in the other scenario, maybe you're looking to transition to a different career, or some situation where you're not quite as free, your current employer doesn't know that you're a future medical writer. So here, think a little bit creatively, and you could put things like, you don't have to put your current position. as your headline. You could put things like data visualization enthusiast, or, you know, passionate about scientific writing. I've seen people add things like that sort of give a bit of personality to the headline as well, like tea drinker or animal lover, something like that. And you can use that bar or maybe some little symbols to separate and say more than one thing about yourself. All right, so have a play with that. You don't have to pick one and stick with it for life. I've changed mine as my sort of business has evolved over time. I've changed mine to reflect that. And freelancers also note how I'm speaking directly to my ideal customer. Okay, your headline should allude to a problem that you know your client has that you can help them to solve. All right, so if you're a medical writer with expertise in oncology, you can say that. If you've got availability from February 2023, you could put that in your headline as well. Again, update it as it evolves. All right, so think about, put yourself in your client's shoes. What do they want to know? The next thing we look at is the about section. So this comes just under that profile banner. And here again, you can see that it's not, this bit shouldn't be sort of another rehash of your CV or your personal statement in your CV, but it's still quite early days in you know, potential employers or potential customers getting to know you. So again, it should be sort of almost like an elevator pitch. What do they want to know about you? How can you help them solve a problem? All right, so again, it could be something about your skills. As you can see here, I talk about my training, about the 5 pillars of medical writing, and I'm ending my about section with a call to action as well. So freelancers note that, always give them somewhere to go to find out more information. You could just say, message me to talk more about my availability. So what I would suggest you don't do is start this about section by, you know, I trained at Imperial College in 2005, and then I went on to take my degree. That sort of thing is not relevant. That's all in the past. People are looking at your profile because they want to see what you're doing now, what you can do for them now. Okay, so really think, what do I want? What's the most important thing I want people to know? Then we go down to the experience section, and this is more like your CV. So this is your work history. And as you know, you can add lots of detail here if you want to. If I just zoom in on some of these. Again, think a bit creatively as to what you can put in here, and also bear in mind the 5 pillars. Okay, so you want to demonstrate here things that you've done that show that you have skills in technical writing, in scientific understanding, in agency skills, and so on. So I haven't here, in my last agency position at Synergy Vision, the one at the top, I haven't said things like, oh, I worked on slide kits and presentations and publications, because pretty much every medical writer is going to have done that. So I've tried to focus on more notable things that are going to interest people. Yeah, so things like we had an outstanding team culture that was recognised as one of the UK's best workplaces. We implemented the 4-day week, and so on and so on. So again, think a little bit creatively. If you're coming from the lab, for example, think about the 5 pillars. So something you could put in here is maybe you worked on a poster that you presented at a congress. So by saying that you worked on a poster, you're showing them, okay, you had technical writing skills because you wrote the poster. You can demonstrate scientific understanding because presumably you developed the research question and did some experiments and interpreted the data. You can show you've got agency skills because you created the poster according to the guidelines and you met the deadline and your poster got accepted by the Congress. Okay, and then and so on and so on. Storytelling skills, you can show that you know what a poster looks like, how to present data in a suitable way. And then finally, strategic thinking. You can show that you chose that congress. Maybe it was the biggest congress where you could present your findings to the relevant audience, to diabetologists or oncologists, or it shows that the bigger picture, that your work would be relevant to the people that were there. And then the last section that I would like to call your attention to is this at the bottom. It's recommendations. So you can give people recommendations, and you can also request them from other people. And this is, when you apply for a job, it says references on request. This is going to give them a bit of an insight into what your references are going to say about you. So good things, hopefully, that will make people say, you're a really great person to work with, you're reliable, you're innovative, whatever it is about your personality. The potential employer or potential client will see that from these recommendations. So don't be shy, ask colleagues for recommendations. If you're a freelancer, ask clients, and try to populate this recommendation section as well. So as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, at some point early in the sort of development of my business, I decided that LinkedIn was going to be a really important part of how I would find new customers, how I would find medical writers who need help with their career development, agencies who need help with their training, and of course, people who need my skills as a medical writer as well. So I did take some training before I started on this, and here are some points that I've learned over the last couple of years about if you're interested in using LinkedIn in this way. The first thing is to bear in mind, again, this concept of getting people to know, like, and trust you. Okay, so you want to share content that helps people to get you to know you a bit more. They want to know a bit more about your expertise. So again, if you're saying that you're a medical writer with particular expertise in oncology, then share the latest information about oncology treatments, and from patient groups, and about the latest oncology congresses that are coming up and things like that. Okay, so it shows that you're up to date on the latest things going on in that field. And also it's really good to share a little bit about you personally. So not too much, but again, just basically showing that you're a person, and it shows what motivates you in your work as well. Share content more often than you think you should. So there are some LinkedIn sort of gurus out there that say that you should be posting at least once a day. That sounds like quite a lot, and it can be quite difficult to come up with content as well. But the idea is that your customers or potential employers are not going to be on LinkedIn every day. They're probably not going to see your post every day, but if they log on a Monday, you've got a recent post. If they log on a Friday, you've got a recent post. So it's improving your chances of being there in people's feeds. Get used to seeing your face on social media. This was a tough one for me. I was okay with sort of sharing family snaps on Facebook, but actually sharing my own sort of face on business posts was a bit of a hurdle. But it's good. People, especially when I'm sort of doing training, people want to get to know me a little bit more before they actually take the plunge and say, and make contact. And another tip is to use a variety of different formats. So you can write your own new content, write your own posts. When I started, I think for every post that I actually put up, there were probably 10 rubbish ones that I'd written that went in the bin or were saved for later. It's a really, really good practice to be able to write in an interesting way for social media, and in a really sort of succinct way as well. So just write whatever comes into your mind, and you don't have to post it until you're ready to, really. You can share things that other people have posted. You know, quite often I'll see a nice infographic or something like that, and I'll share that. And of course, you can interact with other people, commenting on their posts, on their point of view. And think about a range of different formats as well. So you can write articles, you can create polls, you can create images and videos. Again, a lot of LinkedIn gurus suggest that you put videos up at least once a week. And I haven't gone into the realm of video yet. I'm still getting over sharing personal images like your face on social media. So I might get into videos at some point. And I would just end with as well, if you're sharing stuff on LinkedIn, don't forget occasionally, just really sort of clearly telling people what you do and how you can help them. So if you're a medical writer who's a freelancer with availability, then say that. You know, it's there's no harm in just reminding people, new contacts, what you do. Okay, so just to remind you of the 5 pillars of medical writing, if you've got any ideas as we've been going through about how you could update your LinkedIn profile, just sense check them against these 5 pillars of medical writing. Do the examples or the changes that you've thought of show potential employers or potential clients your skills within these 5 pillars. And that's it. I would just remind people to have a look at my website, greenpensolutions.com. There's a few different things for aspiring medical writers on there that will help you get your first job. And that's the end. So I'll hand it back over to Peter.
Great, thanks, Sarah. If we could lose the slides. So hopefully that's given people some food for thought. We've got a few minutes to have a chat. Those of you online today, please, if you've got some comments or questions, use either the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll pick it up and we'll weave it into the conversation over the next few minutes. Just a couple of things. I mean, LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn's fascinating in many ways, partly because it's very difficult to know what the magic answer is. And I think partly it's just activity. Relevant, useful activity creates interest. But there are lots of people who talk about the algorithms and all the rest of it. I think it's difficult to second guess all that stuff unless you really want to put an awful lot of time and effort in. What I am surprised about constantly is how many people, there aren't huge numbers, but how many people don't want to get involved in LinkedIn at all. I literally will not have a profile page. Let's start with the real sort of extreme. You know, there's a few percent of people I come across, and maybe it's only less than 10%, but even so, I'm surprised that they won't put anything on LinkedIn. And I just wonder what your answer is. If somebody says, oh, I don't like to get involved at all, just what do you say to that person? I mean, clearly it's their choice, but what do you say to them at that basic level? Should you actually be on there at all?
It depends what the reasons are, really. I think, you know, there was somebody at the Heathrow event who had been advised not to show her face on social media for one reason or another. So we talked about, you know, could she, as a freelancer, come up with a business name, show the logo of the company rather than her own face. So I think there's ways around it. But yeah, as a hiring manager, as I said in the presentation, that's one of the first things that I would do is to look up somebody's LinkedIn profile. So I'm not saying it would be a complete barrier to finding work or customers, but it's part of the norm these days, I would say. So
I think it's interesting. And I have had a few arguments with people about this. But you know, my view is very, very straightforward. If somebody contacts me, the first thing I do is I look them up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I just do it automatically now. And if I was recruiting somebody, and I accept the fact I don't recruit them, it would definitely be the first thing I do. And if they're not on LinkedIn, I literally question whether they exist. You know, and and that's quite serious. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, I'm not getting people applying for jobs with me, but I get people asking to talk to me about stuff or whatever, or, you know, and they might be selling me something, but even that doesn't happen so often. It's people wanting to talk to me. And you know, what advice have you got, Peter? And you go, well, you know, I'll look at you on LinkedIn. You're not there. I think you're just messing around with me. I don't know who you are, but you're messing around with me.
Yeah.
And I think in a couple of seconds, I've put that person in a very difficult box if they're genuine.
Mm.
And I don't get many sensible answers back from the people who don't have a LinkedIn page at all. And I just find it interesting. And I think in academia, there are maybe some other options, but there is a switch from academia into business life. But I would personally recommend everybody has a LinkedIn page. And what you were talking about, there's lots of good practical stuff in there. But you know, the basic approach is very straightforward. It doesn't take an awful lot of time to have a sensible looking page on LinkedIn. And I think people maybe get put off with either it's going to take me a long time. Is that a good excuse if you're trying to move on and all the rest of it? I don't think it is. People worry about being contacted by people they don't want to be contacted by, recruiters or something. But then if you're trying to get a job, you want to create some attention. I really do have a problem with people who will not go onto LinkedIn at all. And then you don't need much more than the basics to know that, you know, I know that you exist and I'm engaging with you. Anyway, so that I just find it, I think it's fascinating. We are specifically talking about LinkedIn. There are obviously other social media platforms, and we've got a couple of questions coming about Twitter, and I'd like to sort of like not go too far down this line. But an important point about all of this is, you know, your social media or your digital footprint is important, whatever your favored platform is. So firstly, people are looking. If you're applying for a job, people are looking. Yeah, LinkedIn is an obvious place, but there are other platforms. So make sure that the way that you use those platforms is sensible and gives a sensible story. So for instance, I mean, an example I've used and other people have used in similar sorts of presentations. If you're coming to me and saying I want to be a medical writer, and I go and look at your LinkedIn profile and it says my dream is to be a marine biologist in the Philippines, you know, there's a problem. Yeah, think about how it matches. And also, I don't know what you think about this, but I say to people, be careful. You know, that morning after the university party when you put up a witty, you know, amusing blog or something, bear in mind people can find it, and you could be showing that you can be witty and amusing, or you could be showing a degree of unprofessionalism and so on. And people need to think about the fact people are looking for them. Have you got any comments on that? Just as general points, people looking at people on social media.
Yeah, well, I don't have much experience about, I would never look people up on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, or even Twitter, I would say, is probably something I would have. Again, I would, I'm not active on Twitter, but I know people can have sort of quite lively discussions on there, should we say. So, you know, just make sure that you're not saying anything that's going to, you know, be potentially harmful in your career there. But I don't see anything too outrageous on LinkedIn, to be honest. As I said in one of my emails this week, it's quite in the realm of social media.
You used the word,
the most boring.
I saw you say that, and I thought that was an interesting comment, because you know, it depends on how you look at it, isn't it? And what you're trying to do. If you're into people dancing around and doing silly stuff, then LinkedIn probably isn't the place.
That's not going to be there.
But is that what we're wanting if in a professional environment when we're talking about seeking a job?
Yeah.
You know, so it may be boring from that point of view, but incredibly useful. I was intrigued by a couple of comments that come in. Companies asking for profiles like Facebook and Instagram. I suppose I'm slightly surprised that I've not come across it, and I don't know if that's what people are experiencing. I'm surprised a company would say, you know, we would like to see your Facebook profile or something. What I think is more likely is that people will just generally go out and have a look, and then if they fall over things very quickly and easily, you just want to be a bit careful that that digital footprint is matching what you're saying. I think that's the important point there, and it can come down to really stupid stuff. Let's pursue the medical writer stuff. You know, if you're saying you want to be a medical writer, and I look at your LinkedIn profile, and it's fine, but the typos jump out at me, or the grammatical. And again, you can get overly silly about this, but it's sort of common sense, isn't it? I want to be a medical writer, therefore I can spell correctly, sort of thing. And people don't double check some of that stuff. It's remarkable sometimes, at least in my experience.
Yeah, top tip for if you're applying for medical writers jobs, don't allow any typos or any mistakes anywhere in your CV, cover letter, LinkedIn profile. Absolutely, because we're trained to have a really, really high level of attention to detail, so the hiring managers will notice.
Exactly. Attention to detail is just one of those things we're all very glibly saying that's important. And then, as I say, you can look at someone's LinkedIn profile or something and go, well, you're not showing much attention to detail, and you're immediately just missing that, which is a shame. A couple of practical points I just thought maybe you've got a comment on. I have found problems in the past with people changing their title on LinkedIn. It changes their address. We'll add the PhD in or something like that, and it can change your address and so on. You've got to be a bit careful with that sort of thing. You can specify what you want your title to be, but if you start changing it, you can have problems that way. Have you come across that?
Not really. No, not really. No, I haven't personally.
Okay, so it's things like I mean, it does happen, so take that on board. But also people who have nicknames and things, if you're going out there calling yourself, I don't know, Liz something or other, Liz Smith or something like that, but you put yourself up as Elizabeth Smith on LinkedIn, again, it's remarkable how you can just give people a little bit more of a trouble finding you. And if you want to be found, if you're, I think, and that's partly why you're in this environment, you want to be found. So think about those issues. Think about whether people can find that. It's interesting, Carla's just come in and saying she talks about making a separate personal account and an employer professional one. I would say that's fine. And I know people who do that sort of thing. My own personal view is you can have too many pages and too many profiles and it can be quite difficult, sort of matching them and all the rest of it. But it's something to think about, is that when they come to when they look for you, what do they find, or what do you point them at? And does it make sense in terms of what you're talking to them about? What else? Have we got any other comments coming in there? I think the problem is we're slightly over time. I'm very aware of that. So I think that an important point you were making, which people, and again, it's just an open-ended thing, don't just put your profile page up, although that's a very important first step, but get involved in LinkedIn. We use #MedComms, follow the #MedComms, contribute to the conversation, and it does get noticed and you will get picked up, and try and encourage, it helps me if you come in and support what I'm talking about. Maybe you like it, maybe you comment, that's much more interesting, and I can come in and support you and so on. Use #MedComms to keep that together. I think probably we are a little bit over time, so I'm gonna say thank you very much and draw a line there for the recording purposes. Okay. Importantly, you're very happy to hear from people, and the people on the call or watching the video later, obviously using LinkedIn to contact you is the obvious route in terms of today, but you've also provided your website details and so on. So for those of you online today, don't all rush away. We've still got a couple of minutes, but I'd like to draw a line there and say big thank you to Sarah, and encourage you all to reach out to her. Sarah Nelson of Green Pen Solutions. So there you go. Let's give a quick wave and I'll stop the recording. Take care. Bye.